We've been joined by a special guest star today, fresh in from Zoomy land. Not only can he go from 0 to 60 with amazing rapidity, but he can go from 60 to 0 with amazing rapidity. It's quite a quality, isn't it? I wonder if I could learn from that. That brings up today's topic, and that begins with a question. Looney, you've demonstrated this perfectly. Have you noticed that some people suffer from more or less fear than others? In other words, whatever fear is, and however much you or I or anybody might have of it, isn't it absolutely true that there's a variable of how much people have? Some people are almost entirely consumed with fear, and it's the dominant emotional response in their being, and it's quite debilitating. And other people apparently seem to have no fear. We would go to the end of the scale that seems to border on uh, crazy, which is like free climbing El Capitan or jumping off of a Alps mountaintop in a squirrel suit and floating over, zooming down at terminal velocity, uh, just barely missing the rocks on the way down. So that's quite a scale, isn't it? Some people are consumed by fear, and other people, from what we can tell, appear to have no fear. So that's where do we plot ourselves on this scale, and why is there a differential? Well, that's the topic today, and the topic this whole week. Ultimately, my intention, my purpose, my prayer is that we all could access new ideas, thoughts, and especially realizations, moments of aha that could free all of us from whatever prison of fear that we may be assailed by. And it seems to me, and perhaps you can tell me when we have a chance to talk again, that fear for me seems to come in the form of a storm. Storms of fear blow over. And you know what it's like when you're up in Tahoe and in the late summertime, it's perfect weather. And then before you know it, you look up, there's a 60,000 foot thermonuclear cloud. I don't think that's the name of them, but they spew down hail and lightning, and a storm blows over. And then it blows over mercifully. And here's my claim today. Here's my bold, crazy claim, and not preaching or proselytizing. I'm just trying to do my best to translate these scriptural truths in the best way that I can and communicate them. But I'm going to claim that fear is love mistranslated. Fear is love mistranslated. Well, who's doing the mistranslation? I am. And my body and my mind seems to be a unique individual, and I'm going to use a metaphor here, prism, if you will, that takes light and refracts it into my particular variation or interpretation of light. Now, fear is taking love and using my nervous system and my brain and my body to take love and to take all that energy and mistranslate it into something other than love. In other words, taking the true and translating it into the false. Isn't this a unique skill that and ability that God gave us to take infinite absolute love or energy? Yogis call life force prana, the life force. All cultures call it something: chi, prana, mojo, spirit. But each and every one of us is being always fed a virtually infinite amount of this life force, and yet each and every one of us is quote unquote doing something to it. We're shaping it, we're molding it, we're flavoring it into our own unique expression of life force. Now, maybe here is where one of the great keys exists to eradicating or eliminating or at least reducing fear in our life, is this realization that it's my own unique translation that's taking love and turning it into fear. Now, I don't live in anywhere near as much fear as I used to. And that's intentional, and it's also mercy and it's grace. A lifetime of living or growing up in fear puts many of us in a situation where we seek to go through whatever change or transformation we need so that there is less fear and more love, and we're all involved in that. So, if this is the case, and if we're in fear, we're mistranslating love, how do we change our own body so that it's not involved in this inaccurate translation of life force? This is a great question, and this perhaps there are multiple answers to it. There's what we can do on our own. Perhaps we go see a psychotherapist who teaches us cognitive behavioral therapy and teaches us that some brands and some ways of thinking are simply more conducive to fear. Perhaps we've done so much of that kind of therapy. Maybe there's actually the ability of our source, God, love, presence, whatever you would call your higher power, if you have one, and I presume that you do if you're part of this particular gathering, because like attracts like. Is it possible to actually go to God, love, source, and to ask that our own body and brain be transformed and adjusted, altered, so that we're no longer translating love into fear? Huh, there's a thought. Well, perhaps this gives us a very broad and wide palette that enables us, and I'll conclude with this, one of the biggest mistakes human beings ever made, and it probably wasn't intentional, but it's when we named our inner translation system inside of our physical body, we named it a nervous system. What a horrible name, a nervous and fearful system. So one of the things, you've heard me say it a million times, but now we, instead of a nervous system, we have a calm and peaceful system, because all of us are being sent all this life force, and each and every one of us is a prism that's shaping it into either fear or into love. And every day, if we do everything that we can, and we also ask a power greater than ourselves to facilitate, accommodate this transformation inside of us from having a nervous system to having a calm and peaceful system, we can go from 60 to 0 in no time flat, like my cat. Anyway, I hope anything that I said made sense. Have a beautiful fear-free day. See you tomorrow.